So we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to kind of transition from off-court stuff to on-court stuff, kind of a little bit of both with our next guest presenter. I had the pleasure of connecting with Jimmy several years ago at Tommy Nunez's camp in Phoenix. And I just knew right off the bat, he had a passion to help younger officials. And I don't say this lightly, I really do attribute a lot of the success I've had at the collegiate level to Jimmy. So I'm very grateful for him. He's part of the Western Officiating Consortium on the men's side, which consists of the Pac-12, the Mountain West, the Big West, the West Coast Conference, the Big Sky, and the Western Athletic Conference. He started the Referee Educational Forum, which again just kind of goes to show, his heart to help younger officials or newer officials advance in their careers. And so he's going to be talking about communication, dealing with coaches, and just really getting into the rule book. So Jimmy, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's some good stuff Debbie and Joe were talking about. And what's so cool about this, and with having such a different variety and different range of officials that are on the call, is some of this stuff might have been over the first to fourth year, fifth year officials. But what's so cool about it is you should be writing things down, because eventually you're going to be using what they talked about. There may have been something that Joe said or Debbie said that you're like, well, this doesn't apply to me. Well, actually it will. And when you do that, in 3 or 4 years, you're going to go, holy crap. I remember Lika's Zoom call that he had, they mentioned that now it makes sense. So whatever's being said with Debbie, myself, or with Joe, and you don't understand it, write it down. And there's 2 3-word sentences that I've learned that are very important to me. And one will always be is I love you, to my family, friends, whoever and the second one is really important to me is write it down. No matter what it is, write it down, because by nature, officials, we're visual people. So we need to see. That's why we watch video. That's why we ask, we go to games and we watch other officials. So that's really cool stuff. They've said some stuff that even it's going to happen in the high school level. You may be working for 4 or 5 different people, and you got to figure out, what you need to do. Travel, do you call them or whatever. So that was good stuff. So with that said, did you get the clip, Alika?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to start off this session with this clip. And when you watch this clip, I want you to watch it through officiating eyes. Okay, as referees, I want you to, because you can use this clip actually in any part of your life, but I want you to watch it through officials' eyes, your official eyes, and I want you to kind of correlate it and see how it relates, and then we'll talk about it when we get done. So,
you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Most of us go through life trying to do our best at whatever we do, whether it's our job, family, school, or anything else. I feel that way. I try my best. But some time ago, I came to a realization that I wasn't getting much better at the things I cared most about, whether it was being a husband or a friend or a professional or teammate. And I wasn't improving much at those things, even though I was spending a lot of time working hard at them. I've since realized from conversations I've had and from research that this stagnation, despite hard work, turns out to be pretty common. So I'd like to share with you some insights into why that is and what we can all do about it. What I've learned is that the most effective people and teams in any domain do something we can all emulate. They go through life deliberately alternating between 2 zones, the learning zone and the performance zone. The learning zone is when our goal is to improve. Then we do activities designed for improvement, concentrating on what we haven't mastered yet, which means we have to expect to make mistakes, knowing that we will learn from them. That is very different from what we do when we're in our performance zone, which is when our goal is to do something as best as we can, to execute. Then we concentrate on what we have already mastered and we try to minimize mistakes. So the way to high performance is to alternate between the learning zone and the performance zone, purposefully building our skills in the learning zone, then applying those skills in the performance zone. When Beyonce is on tour, during the concert, she's in her performance zone. But every night when she gets back to the hotel room, she goes right back into her learning zone. She watches a video of the show that just ended. She identifies opportunities for improvement for herself, her dancers, and her camera staff. And the next morning, everyone receives pages of notes with what to adjust, which they then work on during the day before the next performance. It's a spiral to ever-increasing capabilities, but we need to know when we seek to learn and when we seek to perform. And while we want to spend time doing both, the more time we spend in the learning zone, the more we'll improve.
So with things like tonight, we're in our learning zone, and we have to be really good in our learning zone in order for us to go out and perform. So when we go out and perform, we're all on the same page. In my humble opinion, that is the formula on how we get better as officials and how we grow. So tonight, for my learning zone topic, I'm going to talk about communication/rules. And a lot of people can say that, communication is one topic and the zone or rules is another topic. But in reality, they both conjoin together, because once you know your rules and once you understand your rules, you're going to be able to communicate with anybody on the floor. Okay. So one thing we talk about when we talk about communication, it's mainly we talk about the coaches, because like as Debbie said, she sees how you can communicate with a coach. Well, what we don't talk more about how we communicate is our emotions when we're going to communicate. We talk about, okay, well, the coach, you need to communicate with the coach, but how are you going to communicate? What's your threshold? What's your line in the sand? What is it? I can't tell you that. You got to figure that out. But through your time as an official and as you're refereeing with more friends and you get to know each other, you'll learn people's personality. Well, you'll understand how they're going to deal with coaches. But if you only referee with somebody once, maybe twice in a few years, you really don't know. So you really got to focus on your personality, your emotions, and how are you going to handle it in order for you to be able to communicate with that coach. And so I'm going to kind of touch on that end of it. And then I'll give you some techniques that I use. Tonight's talk is going to be based off of what I did and what I still do on communicating with coaches. And then we'll get into the rules a little bit. So based off of my threshold and based off of other threshold, 99.99999% of the time that I will understand, and my threshold is going to be based off of my calls when I need to deal with a coach or a player. It's going to be off of mine. That 0.0000001% that I have to say something about my partner, I only use one sentence, and that is, and I'll use Alika as an example. I will say, you know what, coach, Alika will be over here to communicate with you. I don't go into saying, you know what, that's a tough call. Well, maybe it wasn't a tough call for Alika. I'm not going to say it's a tough call. I'm not going to give the coach any ammunition to use against my partner or my teammate. So all I'm going to say is, if they don't agree with it or they want to complain to me regarding another coach or another referee, about their calls, I just say, okay, well, Leko will be over here to communicate with you. And now sometimes the coach says, well, he hasn't talked to me all night. I will turn and use, and this is over experience, and you guys will eventually get there, is, well, why do you think that is, coach? Because I want it to reflect back on them. Well, you know what, your behavior, look at your behavior, put yourself in check. But I said in the demeanor that, you know what, hey, you need to really figure out why he or she's not communicating with you. Okay. So remember that 99% of the time, you only reply to the coach regarding your calls. And the other one is I just use, you know what, coach, Alika will be over here to communicate with you. Okay. So with that said, this is techniques that I used coming up and I still use to this day, but I've pretty much have got them down just because in my learning zone, I made sure I perfected it. There's 4 words that I use when I get ready to deal with a coach, and we'll go over them. And the 4 words are where, when, why, and how. Okay. And they're not in that order, but those are the 4 words. So let's put them in the order that I do. The first one is why. And I ask myself, why do I need to get over there and talk to the coach? Okay. Do you have a coach who's constantly complaining? Well, I need to get over to him and, get him in whatever way I have to get him to quit. You may have a coach who all he wants to do is referee. The coach is 3 seconds, traveling over the back, trap, whatever it is, they're constantly refereeing. Or do you have a coach that doesn't say anything and he or she's, letting you referee, then all of a sudden, boom, they get out of character. They get demonstrative. And it's way, way, way where it's like, okay, they don't act like that. Why did that happen? So I asked myself, why do I need to get over there to talk to the coach? Second thing is I asked myself, when am I going to get over and talk to that coach? Okay. When is the best time to talk to him or her? And there's usually, there's different, times that we can talk, but usually the most important, probably I'd say the one that we usually use is a timeout. Is when he calls or she calls a timeout is usually the best time that we will communicate with the coach. With that said, okay, what you still want to do is you want to make sure that a coach gets back, and wants to talk to you during a timeout. What I usually use is when I say, okay, when I need to talk to him, it's timeout. I will walk to the bench over to him and I'm gonna say, okay, coach, hey, you know what? Your kids need you right now. Coach them, and I will talk to you when the timeout's over with. Okay. Another time is if a coach is behind you at it, and the ball goes out of bounds and there's and he wants to, or she wants to say something to you, then what I usually do is I usually say, okay, I'll lean in to let him know I'm listening, but I never take my eyes off the players. I'm constantly looking at the players. Okay. Because that's our job. Okay. Another time you can talk to a coach if there's a clock malfunction. There's an error in the book. A player wasn't in there. Excessive, timeout or whatever it is. Anything administrative. That's another time. But if the referee is taking care of that, we don't want to run over to the coach and say, hey, guess what? I want to talk to you. What did you want to say? No, leave it alone until you are right next to the coach. That is the best time to communicate. That's when we can, talk to them when they need to. Third thing is where am I going to talk to this coach? Okay. And there's only one place, ladies and gentlemen, and that is his bench or her bench. No other place. If they call a timeout and they come out after you, you know what? Walk them back to their bench, because that's it. If they kind of still stand there, you keep walking. Just keep walking, because they're going to catch up to you. Okay. And if you use the thing, hey, coach, I understand what you're saying. Your kids need you now, coach. And he turns and he says to one of his assistants, you coach him. Well, what I do is I walk a little bit closer to the bench, so he's in earshot of his assistant coaching. So if the assistant coach says something he doesn't want to hear, or he knows he ain't coaching them right, now he's focused back on them. But I want to make sure he's in earshot of his assistant coaching while he's talking to me. Okay. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and we'll talk or whatever. And then I get out of there. Okay. And I try to get him back to coaching, but there's only one place where you want to have him, and that is where. Okay. The final one is how. And this one is easier said than done. I'm going to tell you right now, because it's an emotional game and we are emotional as well. Let's go back to the top. What's your threshold? Where's the line in the sand for you? Where are you going to let them come up to? Okay. What are your triggers that your threshold? Do you just go, okay, enough's enough? Okay. So here are some of the techniques that I use and that I've kind of done throughout, my officiating. And this isn't the Bible. I'm not saying I'm right or I'm wrong, but they've worked for me, and they may hopefully help you and work for you. I self-talk a lot. So if I know I'm starting to get upset at a coach, I self-talk. And I read in a book a long time ago that when you start feeling yourself getting upset or getting frustrated, count from 5 backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And start talking to yourself. Stay calm, stay cool. Okay, don't get caught up in his emotion. He's just emotional. Stay calm, stay cool. And I talk myself in staying calm, cool, and collective right after I count down from 5. Okay. And then here's another thing. Do you say coach or do you call him or her by their first name? Okay, because when you call a coach by their first name, it's more personable. And when you say, hey, coach, it's more of a professional. So when I am talking to a coach and I say, you know what, Alika, or you know what, Debbie, I understand, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. I got you. But when I've had enough, they understand when I go, you know what, coach, that's enough. They know that they're now at the end, at that line, that they're getting ready to cross, and it's not going to be a good thing for him or her. Okay. So that's kind of, you know, what I use and how I approach it. Here's something big, and you need to do this. And this isn't just a tip, but this is something that is a must. You need to have the answer before you even go over and talk to them. So if it's a block charge and he or she's not happy, you better know why it's a block charge. Okay, we're going to talk about the rules here in a minute, but your rules is huge. Okay, so when they come up to you and they ask you, you better already have the answer before they even ask it. Okay, that's huge because two things. One, it's going to show that you know what you're talking about, and they may not agree with it, but they may doubt themselves a little bit more regarding that call. So have the answer before you go over to it. Here's the other thing, and I don't even use this in my personal life. I never say I thought. And the reason for that is because when you say I thought, it leaves doubt. Okay. So, you know, I don't like, you know, I thought you said 5 o'clock. Well, that tells me you're not listening to what I'm saying. I thought you said you wanted me to pick you up at 7. You know, there's the listening skill to it. So when a coach says, you know, that was over, Jimmy, that's over the back. And I go, well, I thought, you know, he didn't make much contact or she didn't make much contact. You know, now he's thinking that you don't know what you're saying. Okay. So what you do reply to him or her is, I hear what you're saying, coach, but by rule, she did go over the back, but that's not a foul because there's space. On the back is a foul. Now what I've done is I've given them the rule, but I told them what happened, and I've said, hey, you know, listen, this is the rule. Okay. But I've let them kind of vent a little bit. But then what I did was I told them exactly what it was. I didn't say I thought. I gave them definition and I gave them fact. So I would say get I thought out of your vocabulary for the rest of your career. Okay. So now as the game's going on, I ask myself, okay, why are they at? Why do I gotta go over there? When am I going to get over there? Okay, where am I going to go? Where am I going to be able to talk to them? And how am I going to be able to talk to them? Okay, so that's how what I use as my technique and kind of what I've done through my career. And in my learning zone, it started off I really had to learn that. And I studied it and I learned it and I did trial by error. When I was at, you know, camp, or if I was doing a scrimmage, I was constantly trying to work on those things. And did I fail? Absolutely. But I failed forward because I wanted to make sure that I got better at it. I was talking to other people. How it all started for me is when I first started, there was 3 Division I referees that asked me if I wanted to go to lunch with them. So I went to lunch with them and I started noticing how they were really communicating with coaches. Debbie made a point to you guys earlier that when she said, when I'm looking at camp and I look at what you look like, your appearance, then I want to see myself, how you're going to communicate with my coach. That was huge. It may not, some of you guys might not have hit that, but I'm telling you right now, from the high school level all the way up to Division I, even at the NBA level, communicating with coaches is huge because it takes a big load off of their shoulders. So when they see you, when they look at you and they say, you know what, not only does he or she look good, but they communicate well, I don't think I'm going to have to worry about it. I'm not going to get a phone call afterwards or an email. That is huge. And that goes from high school all the way up. So that was big. So one thing you really want to do is you want to really figure out how you're going to communicate and using those for. That's what I do. That's something that hopefully you can start up with or start your own little formula that'll help you communicate. So we talk about communication, we talk about the rules, and we talk about how they coordinate together. Yes, are they two separate topics? Absolutely. Okay. But most importantly, to understand how to communicate, there's one thing that you absolutely have to do. There's no shortcuts to it. You absolutely have to know Rule 4. If there's anything, get in Rule 4. That's definitions. Learn the definitions. I would say for you veterans that are on this call, if there's veterans on the call, you know what? It's reminders for you, because you know what traveling, you know what they are, but stay in that Rules 4, because now the rules 9 and 10, fouls and violations, fouls and penalties and violations, and Rule 9, it'll make so much more sense to you at that time. Okay. So now there's rules verbiage that we can use when we talk and when we communicate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tell you how I first started learning the rules, and I still do it to this day. When we read our rule book and we read our case book, they can become complicated. A1 fouls B1. As a ball goes through the hoop, A2 fouls B2 as B3 comes in and pushes A1. So you're kind of, it's all over. So I'm going to give you a technique that I use, and I still use it this day, because the vernacular in the rule book can get kind of crazy. So I'm going to start off with the case book play, okay? And I'm going to read it to you as it's written in the rule book, and then I'm going to read it to you how I read it. Here it goes. After attempting to block A1's dunk, B1 falls into the seats or grandstands behind the basket. As B1 attempts to return to the playing court, a fan makes an unsporting or derogatory comment towards B1, who goes back into the seats and confronts the fan, either physically or verbally. Okay, so this is what I do. So now I got B1, I got A1, and what I do is I personalize it. Okay, so what I'm going to do tonight, since Alika is on the call, Alika is going to be A1. Okay, and we'll just use Debbie, since she's, I know she's off, but we'll just use her because you guys heard her talk. So Debbie's going to be B1. All right, so it's going to read like this. After attempting to block Alika's dunk, Debbie falls into the seats. Now I've just visualized it because we're visual. Now I just visualized, Debbie trying to dunk it, Alika fouls her, and he's the one that goes in. Okay, and then after Alika returns to the floor, he hears and he turns around and goes back up to the stands. Okay, well, Alika, who goes back into the stands, either gets physical with the fan or uses vulgarity against the fan. All right, so what I've done is I've made it personal. So now I understand. Now you can use anybody, use your dog, use your partner, use your husband, use your wife, use your kids. I use my kids. A1 and B1 are always my son and my daughter. If I have a A2 and a B2, then I'll use my dog, and I'll use, if I have a parrot, whatever, because now I visualize it. And now it makes sense to me because I'm visualizing people who I know, and now I can see it. Okay, here's the ruling. The official shall assess B1 with a flagrant 2 contact technical foul. Any player on team A must shoot 2 free throws with the players on the free throw line, not on the free throw line. Players shall assess or resume play by the throw-in procedure. Okay, so now what I do is I just go back and I read it with the official shall assess Alika with a flagrant 2 non-contact foul. Any player on team A, which will now be Debbie's, any player on Debbie's team may shoot 2 free throws with no players on the free throw. Play shall resume by team A, which is Debbie. Players shall resume by Debbie's team, thrown in with the procedure rule. Alika, which is B1, is ejected from the game. So that's how I personalize it, and now it makes sense because I'm visualizing and I'm seeing it. Okay, that's how I do my case book, and that's how I play. In my rule book, it says a player shall adhere to rules pertaining to illegal contact, including and not limited to different guidelines that apply. Well, I change the player to somebody that I know in my family, and I use my son. So I say, his name's Joshua. So I say, Josh shall adhere, and it can kind of get complimented. So we know adhere means follow. So I just say, Josh shall follow the rules pertaining to illegal contact. Now I'm seeing my son Josh. He better pay attention. He better not do the illegal contact. So what I've done was I've personalized it, and words that I don't understand in the rule book, I look them up and I write them down, and then I simplify it, and then I implement those words into the rule. And now it's made it simple. I understand it. I'm visualizing with people I know, and it makes the rule and the case book a lot easier to read and understand. Now, with that said, after I do that, and I really get that down, we know during the game that Alika and Jimmy and Deb are not the ones who were fouling, so we're not doing it. So as I go from 1 to 1A, which is now color and number, I start getting better at that. And I always use white as a home team, and I use any of my favorite color as a visiting team. So I'll say white 15. Okay, so when we go back, instead of B1, I'm going to use, or A1, I'm going to use white 15, goes for a dunk, green 1 or green 12, whatever number you want, fouls, right? And then so I'm going to start using color and number, color and number, color and number. But as soon as I want to see it first. And now I want to implement color and number, because that's what I'm going to see. And then when you understand the rule, and you understand that because you've seen it and you visualize it, it's going to make your job so much easier. And I promise you, you will stand out. That's what saved me getting in the rule book and personalizing it, making it a lot easier for myself. Once you read it that way, you're going to go, oh, the lights clicked on for me. Okay. So what I've also done, now we're going to go back to communicating, because we've read the rule book. We understand the rule book a little bit better. And now what we're going to do is, how do I communicate and use rules to communicate with the coach? Okay. So what I've done is I made a list of 20 responses that I could say to a coach based of what out of the rule book. I use, airborne shooter. I use a triple threat, unsporting act, secondary defender, landing area, gather. He didn't gather, upward motion, whatever is in the rule book that you can use when you want to get ready to communicate. Like I said, we're going to go back to the beginning, have the answer before you go over there. I have 5 responses that I pretty much have in my back pocket that if something comes up that I can use, because those are basically everybody sees throughout the game. All right. So I put together the 20 words, or excuse me, 20 sentences that I possibly can use to communicate with the coach. Okay. And I usually have them to where if I need to communicate something with them, then what I will do is I will kind of figure out what their emotions are and what I need to say. So with that said, okay, going all the way back to the beginning about communication, okay, throughout the game, okay, the formula that I use of the 4 words, where, when, why, and how, the rule book, the verbiage, what I need to say and how I'm going to say it, how I keep my emotions in check, okay, is a revolving door. I do that on every play, because that's going to happen throughout the game. And I got to really be aware of it. And I can tell you one thing right now, it takes time to get there. I just finished my 20s. I'm getting ready to start my 23rd year at Division I basketball. I'm a big advocate for women's basketball. I started on the women's side. It's really cool that the guy asked about working both men and women. I actually did it for 5 years in the Big Sky. I'd work a women's game on a Thursday and a men's game on a Saturday. And yeah, you got to know your rules and you got to know your mechanics, and you really have to show up. Now, and Debbie hit it. You either work in men's or you work in women's. They've kind of got rid of that. So I was fortunate to be able to work both sides. So on the men's side, it's definitely a different demeanor when we're communicating with coaches, more so, in my opinion, than it is on the women's side for a man to communicate. So, but it's a it's a good way to learn to communicate. Kind of went through it kind of quick because I know it's kind of getting late for some people. Those are techniques that I use. That's kind of things that I say and kind of how I do and how I kind of read the rule book and how I learn to read the rule book. And then based off the clip, I want to make sure that I'm in my learning zone all the time. So when I get ready to go to my performance zone, I've got it down. I'm hoping that my partners and my other colleagues are in their learning zone. So when we go on the floor, we're on the same page. And your learning zone from doing Zoom calls like this, when you're at camps, and when you're doing so on. So that's really all I got, Alika. I know it was kind of quick and kind of through, but I know there's Deb and Joe had some really good stuff, and I know it's kind of getting late for some people. So that's kind of how I've learned to read the rule book and how I've kind of stayed on top of the game and how I've learned to communicate with coaches.
Awesome, Jimmy. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, there's just so many different tools and techniques that we can use as resources to really help us in situations like that. And I'll tell you this, whether you hear it from Debbie as a coordinator or whether you hear it from another official, I mean, if you really want to advance in this avocation, it's going to be important for you to know how to communicate. And obviously, I think what gives us confidence in our communication is knowing the rules, right? You don't want to sound like you're making stuff up. You don't want to sound like you're talking gibberish to the coach. And sometimes you'll find that a lot of the coaches that you deal with don't actually know the rules. And so it's important for us to be able to educate these coaches as well by our communication. But one of the biggest things is it's just not what we communicate. It's how we communicate, right? It's our demeanor.
Right.
So,
well, I could tell you right now that it's even starting at the high school level that these coaches have somebody on their bench that know the rule. And they're going to ask that person. I know at our level, they have one specific person and their role is to know the rules. So when we communicate with that coach and we say something, because Alika hit it on the nail, they have no clue what the rule is. So they're going to walk down to that guy or that gal and say, hey, is that right? And they're going to either say yes or they're going to say no. Okay. So it happens at the high school level, even goes all the way to the NBA level. So just know that if you know your rules and you get verbiage out of the rule and you explain it to them and you practice, get in front of the mirror, practice them saying something to you, practice them saying, come on, Jimmy, you missed that call. My response now is so easy. Okay, well, what did you see that I didn't see? Now I want him to explain it to me. Okay, that's fair. Okay, if you saw it that way, I missed it. So once you're in the rule book and you understand the rule and you know the answer before it's asked, you're going to be golden. You're going to be gold. So that's all I got, man.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions for Jimmy?
Kind of late.
Well, I do have a question for you. Was there a certain point in your career dealing, with the communication piece that you can recall, that really just stood out as far as maybe what made you better at communicating or what made you strive to get better at communicating with coaches?
Yeah. My biggest thing was when a coach asked me a question, I wouldn't respond. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, I just didn't know how. And so I was starting to get the reputation that I was arrogant. I wasn't talking to him. And, once I told the supervisor, it's not that I just don't want to say anything wrong or stupid. And the first thing she said to me is, well, if you know your rules, you won't ever say anything wrong or stupid. And that's when it hit home. That's when I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm okay at the rule book, but I self-doubted myself. But once I started reading the rule book and I read a page a night, and I'll read it a couple of times, and then I'll go to the next page, and then I just go over, and it's a routine. I do it throughout the whole year. So yeah. So when my supervisor was like, you just need to get in the rule book, and you'll be able to answer, and you'll be able to talk, and it'll become. And now it's easy because you know that you you're going to be able to answer them correctly without making. And here's something I will say, Lika, that I did say to my. But if you missed a call, man, tell them you missed the call. Just say, you know what, coach, that was flat out incorrect. Block charge. I had a block charge call. I got it backwards. I told the coach, you know what, I missed that call, and I'm going to tell the kids not to do anything wrong, or he did nothing wrong. Don't do anything different, because that was on me. The coach was ecstatic. He was like, "Thank you, Jimmy. That's all I wanted to hear," and it made our communication. And one of the other things that is it made our trust amongst each other a lot stronger. So yeah, that's what I.
And on that same note too, there's times we're working with officials or crew members that we've never worked with before. How do I guess I'll say this? Maybe as an inexperienced official coming into a game, maybe you have a disagreement with a call or just a philosophy as far as the communication within the crew. What is some insight as far as, being the inexperienced official communicating that versus shying away?
What I would say is if I would come with the approach of the reason why you're asking is because you want to get better and you want to make sure that if it ever comes up again, that you'll know how to handle it. One, because they won't think that you're stepping on their ego or whatever it is, how it goes. But two, it'll make it a lot easier for you to communicate. So I would just say, if you and I are working on it and, you're the new guy and you're like, hey, Jimmy, can we talk about that play? And the only reason why I want to talk about it is because the way you handle it, I like the way you handle it. If it comes up again, I'd like to make sure that I know what to do. And then it opens up, right? It opens up communication with each other, right, wrong, or indifferent. Okay. Now, if it's your play and the veteran comes and say, well, you got that backwards, use the same thing out. Oh, okay. All right. Well, what did you see that you don't think, what did you see that I didn't see? Same thing I use on the coach. Well, what did you see? Well, you didn't do this. And then, oh, okay. Well, I'll make sure I'll write it down and I'll be sure to look at it on video.
Awesome.
That's all you do is just communicate, stay positive. And you know what? Because at the end of the day, video don't lie, and you're going to see it and you're going to, and he may be right. Maybe you did miss it, but you're going to take it and you're going to write it down. So that's what I would say is if you're a younger official and you want to talk to a veteran official and you want to get their opinion, or you feel that they might have missed something or they're refereeing in your primary and you think they're not giving you an opportunity, ask them, what is there something that I'm missing in my primary? Ask them, but do it in a manner to where they're going to be able to give you some constructive feedback, and you'll know if they're bullshitting you or not. So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that's some good ways to approach, and for a lot of the newer officials that are on this call still, when we talk about advancing or growing as an official, right, and enhancing our skill sets, when it comes to communication, you're on the floor and you hear it, whether it's the coach asking your partners a question or whether it's the coach asking you a question. There's so many different responses out there, but just kind of having your, in the back of your head or in your back pocket, like what are some of the responses or some of the questions that these coaches are going to ask, and, kind of just have a preset answer of how, you're going to approach that. And again, it's always demeanor, right? We could say things, but it's not necessarily what we say, it's how we say it. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about too, before we end the call, there's a lot of officials on here, whether it be they're at the D3 level right now and they want to get to D2 or D2 to D1. A lot of D2 conferences don't use precision timing, but when you advance to the Division I level, most every Division I team or a conference uses precision timing. So is there any technique or is there any resources out there available to, same thing with monitor review?
Right. I would say, because it differs from women's to men's basketball as well. And I would say always have a constant count in your head. In the men's game, we got rid of where we do a 10-second backcourt count. but it never matched up with with the clock. So I would say be very conscious of what's on the clock. Precision time. If when you chop the clock, look up. Okay. I still do it with precision time. I touch my button and I go right to the clock. So I'm saying, if you don't have precision timing, still chop and look at the clock. Chop, look at the clock. When the ball goes out of bounds, look at the clock. Always constantly have clocks in your mind. Okay. If you're a first, second year official and the ball's going out and you're still trying to learn your mechanics and you're still trying to figure out where you need to go, this may kind of be something that you may want to wait on until you get that down. But I promise you, if you write this down, I'll guarantee you within probably the end of your second, third year, you're going to start understanding what we're talking about. But I would say make sure you have definite knowledge of clocks, because that'll help you. And then with precision timings for the D2, D3 people who don't have it, make sure that you always have an opinion on a play. Okay, if it's your play, you've got your opinion. Make sure if it's not your play that you have an opinion that you will be able to assist on it. Okay, and if we have a consensus, you know what? We still can use the table, right? We still can ask the table if for some assistance. So always have an opinion on the play, especially if you don't have monitor review. Where in monitor review we can get it down, we're in and out. It's really tough for the Division II, NAIA, Division III, even JUCO player or referees who are trying to advance. That will get you there quick, because what's going to happen is at a camp, Debbie's going to see you. They're going to see you, how you handled it, how you went to your partners to get information, didn't have any information. You went to the table, didn't have any information, came together, put it together, boom, you got the ball back in play. They're going to say, you know what, Jimmy can I like what he did. He can run a game. And that's huge for the coach. That's huge for the supervisor. I'll say two things that a supervisor will really look at. One is, yes, it's the parents and it's all that. But there's two things that really will stand out for him. One is, can he or she communicate with coaches? Because I know it's going to be. And one of the biggest thing, can he or she run a game? If they can run a game, you're gold in any league, high school, junior college, Division II. Once you do that, you're going to start moving up the ladder. Those two things are huge. Get yourself in the rule book, understand verbiage, understand how you can communicate with players, partners, and coaches. You're going to do just fine.
Awesome. Well, I know it is getting late. Does anyone else have any questions for Jimmy or myself? All right. Well, Jimmy, again, thank you so much for being here, for sharing just your wisdom, your experience. I know you've been at it for quite a long time, and so thank you so much for taking the time to again just pour into all of us that are here tonight. And I really appreciate you.
It was my pleasure, and best of luck to everybody on this call. And you guys, man, keep doing what you're doing. You do it because we know we do it for the love of the game. For you veterans who are working and mentoring these younger referees, keep doing what you're doing and make it a way that they can understand and make it easier till they get, and it'll all pay itself off. So thank you, Alika. I appreciate you letting me share my story a little bit.
Amen. Well, thank you again. Thank you for all of you that are here tonight, that have taken the time to invest in yourselves. With Xcel officiating, we stand by three things, which is passion, dedication, and sacrifice. Passion for the game, right? The dedication to improve and to grow as officials, and sacrifice, to, again, learn the game, but also, we talk about priorities. We all have a life outside of officiating. And so when you sacrifice to invest in yourselves, it goes a long way. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. I hope you all have a blessed season, a safe season, safe travels, stay safe. And we'll look forward to the next time. So again, thank you all for being here.